somebody in the world hearing me besides you? Wow. Okay. I hear this. This is like booming off me. Okay. Thanks, Lynn. I should charge my head. I wonder how many people are listening out there. So supposedly when they were making their last album, and it was like the last days of the Beatles, and boy, oh boy, it's wild to look at them then as opposed to when they broke out, you know? The transformation of four guys. In the early days, they practically looked like one. They all wore the same suits, and they called them the mop tops and all this. But by the end, they were totally different people, having been through what they'd been through individually, and then they all went off into solo careers and stuff. But supposedly they made this last album, and they made it a lot at Abbey Road headquarters, where they were, Apple headquarters, and then they wanted to play one concert, and they didn't know where to go. And you've probably seen it. You know, remember where they wound up? They played it on the rooftop of the building. And it became this like monumental thing because it was the Beatles in the end. And there's a whole I knew about some of this, I've seen some of it, but there's a whole documentary coming out, and it's like really up and close. And I saw some of it, I was like, it's like watching gods. I mean, these guys are like gods, you know?
It's unbelievable. 50 years later, it's the first time seeing this stuff.
Yes. And there's a lot of stuff like that, archival stuff, that they find, they don't find, from different bands, different people, all this stuff. But it really, it just grabbed my attention because when Michael Jackson was alive, how long has he been dead now? Anybody have an idea? At least how many? Yeah, wouldn't be surprised. I mean, after the Pope to Catholicism, Michael Jackson is probably the most popular person in the world in a lot of ways, when you think about it. Music has a way of doing that. He's gone now. I think Paul McCartney is like the #1 guy in the world. Really, you know? And I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back and tours big time. I think he's made at least an album or two in pandemic. Plus, he's been touring for years. But, oh, yeah. Last, what? Well, we're all getting older. You want to hear a weak voice? Ian Anderson and Jethro Tull, how long he pushed that. He went through a 50th anniversary celebration, and his voice was like, because I had seen him from the early days and repeatedly. And in fact, he did something really interesting. You get me talking about music all day. For one of his last tours, to present it, he got help. He got a younger guy who like played the younger Ian and helped him sing on things. And he got a woman, and he also used people on the screen that was pre-recorded. And a dear friend of mine, who's a big fan too, we've seen him together, we saw him in Israel together, said he thought it was brilliant that he brought help in to pull it off, as opposed to saying, I can't do it all myself.
That's what the Rolling Stones do. Nick doesn't carry the tune like he used to. I mean, he'll hit the note, but he doesn't hold it. The background singers do.
Hey, by definition, you know, we heard these guys record these songs that were 20 years old. Now they're like 70, 80. Speaking of the Stones, do you know where they're playing tonight?
I know they're touring in the States, but I don't know.
Dallas, no, Austin, Texas.
Okay.
How do I know this? My daughter Shira, who's a big Stones fan, I took her many times. She went to more concerts than her sisters because she had the way of wangling her way in. She really did. She really did. She'd always like, Abba, you have 2 tickets to Stones? I think you should take me because, you know, my sisters have seen other stuff and I'm younger and I haven't seen as much. She had her way of wangling her way in. I remember, like, we went up to, like, Giant Stadium, and she went, and she had time, oh, that's good. But her and her boyfriend got 2 tickets. Alana and her husband from Israel, Ophir, are in. Her boyfriend is taking Ophir. He's going to see the Stones. Just came in from Israel. I don't know if he's a fan, but who's not? But I think he's going to have the time of his life.
You like all the artwork stuff, the music-related artwork?
A lot of stuff.
What's the, not the main guitar, the bass player name?
For who?
For the Stones.
The past one or the present one?
Present one.
Oh, I'll tell you in a second. The original was Bill Wyman.
Right.
Then he left. And now it's Daryl Jones, I want to say.
It might be the rhythm guitar player then.
You talking about Ronnie Wood?
Yeah.
Okay.
He does artwork of each set list,
Might have heard that.
of the shows that he does, so, and he sells them.
I might have heard that. Yeah. I might have heard that.
And then like Nick and some of the others will doodle on it a little bit.
These things wind up being sold for God knows. Anyway, all right. Yeah. Well, you get me running on music I like. Forget it. Not my fault. I become another entity. But yes. So we're going to daven. Yeah, we'll cover everything. We'll get there. Reminds me of a story about the Lubavitcher Rebbe for another time. But on page, thank you for your indulgence for those who couldn't care less. But anyway, we're on page 101 with Ma Tovu. Ma Tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenatecha Yisrael. Ma Tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenatecha Yisrael. We're going to turn to the brachot on page 103. Judaism right away in the morning tells us to give thanks. And sometimes we have to stop and think. Sometimes say for what, because we're having a hard time or whatever. But hopefully we all have something to give gratitudes for. We talked about it all the time on page 103. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lasech v'ira l'vchin ben yom ve'en laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chalam shasani b'tzomo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chalam shasani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chalam shasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chalam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chalam abisha rumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chalam atir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chalam zokev gifufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chalam rokaharetz alamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chalam amechim mitzalei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chalam shasali kol tzarki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chalam ozei Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chalam otei Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chalam hanotein layayif kawach. Call us to strength. May we all have the strength to get through the day, meet our challenges, and enjoy it as much as we can. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai gomer chasadim tovim l'amo Yisrael. Dear God, we thank you for the love that you demonstrate towards Israel and the world, and may we reflect that love towards others as well as ourselves. Page 106, near the top is Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto Li'olam Va'ed. Kadesh et Shimcha Makdish Shemecha v'Kadesh et Shemcha B'Elomecha v'Vishuata Tarim Tamir Karneinu Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh et Shemcha Barabim. Is there any way of asking Aaron if there's people on watching this? No? Oh, well, that's one. That's 10%. Here comes Warren. Do we have a minion? Yes, we have. Did you say there was two coming? So, you know what I'd like to do? Let's, page 112. Another two coming. I thought two meant Warren plus one guest. Look at you guys. Welcome. Joyce Murray. Page 112. Hayom Yom Shabbat Kodesh, Shabbat Yodim Merim Beveit HaMikdash, Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat, Tov Lo Dod La Adonai, Ulezamer L'Shimcha Elyon, Lezamer L'Shimcha Elyon. The Psalm for the Sabbath day. We give thanks to you, O Lord, and sing your name, proclaim your faithfulness each night. So now, we have a minion here with the Torah. Bert, can I ask you to open the Aron Kodesh? And we're going to have with the Torah a minion present in the room. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Great to see you all. Anybody wants to rise for the Kaddish, please do so. Carol Baldridge had Kaddish this week, so we're thinking of her. Other people too. Sherry Belkoff lost her mother some weeks ago, and others over the course of time. And Bert, look at that. We're here together with a minion because I know you wanted to say it. So page 121, for whoever wants to join in to remember loved ones. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah v'alama divra chirutei v'amlich malchutei v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'izman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevarach Leolam ulomeo maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitasei. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal. Shmei d'kudsha b'richu. Le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata. Da'amiran b'alama v'imru amen. Yehei shloma rabba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. We close the ark. Boy, here's our first Hanukkah miracle this season. Look at that. Look at that. Glad we got a chance to do that. Yeah. Okay. We're on page 122. Baruch Shamar Vaya Olam Baruch Hu Baruch Hosev Reshit Baruch Shemo Baruch Omer V'Yosef Baruch Hu Baruch Gozer Kayim Baruch Shemo Baruch Merachem Al Haaretz Baruch Hu Baruch Merachem Al Abriot Baruch Shemo Baruch Meshalem Sachar Tov L'Reav Baruch Hu Baruch Hailad v'kayam lanetzach, Baruch Shemo, Baruch Podel Matzil, Baruch Hu uVaruch Shemo, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Yachid Chai Olamim melech meshubach u'mefardet Shema Gadol, Baruch Atah Adonai melech mula batish bachot. We're going to turn ahead to Ashrei, which you're going to find on page 136, I believe. Yeah, 136. Ashrei Yoshrei Veitecha, Od Yalucha Sela, Ashrei Am Shekacha Lo. Yoduch Lakol Masech V'Chasidecha Yevarchucha. Tilat Adonai Daber Pivi Verekov Soshen Kol Shalom Vohed V'Anachnu Marachia Me'atavi Ad Olam. Hallelujah. We're going to sing on page 141, top paragraph near the end, the song from Psalm 150. Hallelujah, hallelujah, B'tzil Tzalei Shama. Hallelujah, hallelujah, B'tzil Tzalei Trua. Kol anshamat hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol anshamat hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Baruch uVaruch Shem Kavodo L'Olam V'Yimelech Chavodo Kol Haaretz. Amen v'Amen. Page 144. We're reading about Yaakov and Esav in this week's Torah reading of Vayishlach. So it says that for sovereignty belongs to Adonai, who rules the nations, and deliverers shall rise on Mount Zion to judge the mountain of Esau, and dominion shall belong to Adonai. May Adonai be sovereign over all the earth, and on that day, Bayom hahu, Yeh Adonai Echad, Ushemo, Ushemo, Ushemo Echad. 147, second paragraph. Shochein ad marom v'kadosh shemo v'chatuv ranu tzadikim baranu shenam te'ilah. V'fi yesharim titalav divrei tzadikim titbarach uv'shon chasidim titromam uv'karev kadoshim titgadash uv'makalot rivavot amacha beit Yisrael. Pretty nice version. Lo do la leil l'shabech l'faher l'ramim l'hader l'varech l'aleo kales al kol divrei shirov v'tishbechot David ben Yishai v'chamishichecha yishtabach shimcha la'ad malkeinu Hela melech hagadol Barachot vodo me'at havid olam baruch atah Adonai El melech gadol b'tishbachot El odot Adonai niflot habocher b'shirei zimra melech ha'olamim. We're going to turn to the bracha on page 150 at the top. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or v'rei choshech oseh shalom u'v'rei et hakol. Page 153, right in the middle are words of holiness. Kadosh, 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 Adonai tzivahot, melach al haaretz kevodo. V'alfanim v'chayot hakodesh, brash gadol miyosim l'aptzarafim, liumatam v'shabchim ve'omrim, Baruch kevod Adonai, mim komo, le'el bruch nimot yitenu, melech hachai v'kayam, zemirot. Or Chadash al Tzion Tahir, Or Chadash al Tzion Tahir, V'nizkech ulanu Meheira li'oro, Meheira li'oro, Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMeorot. I want to invite you to take a look on 153 where we are. All the way in the left margin, the second selection is entitled Angels. So I share this with you, not only that it's right on the page, but also lately we've been talking about deities that we're not sure or entities we're not sure exactly who they are. We have it in today's Torah reading. It says that Jacob wrestled with an ish, a man, vayevok imo ish, wrestled with a man, but we're not sure whether it's really a man, an extraordinary man, an angel God, or maybe himself. But same kind of word is used. Then we have, in Abraham's story, he looks up and he sees Shalosh Malachim, 3 messengers, sees it from afar. And he looks out and we're not sure if they're angels, if they are people, if they're men, who is coming to deliver these messages about the upcoming birth of Isaac and others. So look what it says here. Larry Kushner, great scholar, writes the Hebrew word for angel is malach, which also means messenger, one who is sent. On Friday night, what do we sing? Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, the ministering angels. There's a song to the angels and a lot of midrash about why we do that. One who is sent. When you go to Israel, or on a long journey, there's a tradition to give people tzedakah, to give when you arrive, because they say that a shaluach mitzvah can have no harm befall him or her. Meaning if you're on your way to doing a mitzvah, then no harm can befall you. So when someone's going to Israel and you give them some money and you say, give it to tzedakah, you have transformed them into a representative, a shliach, a representative to do a mitzvah. So the hope is that no harm will befall them and they'll get to Israel safely. Now that people are traveling again, dear friend left for Israel Thursday night. Alana flew Thursday from Israel to here. They might have met in the air. I don't know. I told them to wave to each other. They know each other well. But if you ever know anybody going to Israel, give them a few dollars, whatever you want, for tzedakah, because it'll help ensure their journey according to our story. Amy, welcome to you. Shabbat shalom. Good to see you, dear. So that is the story about the mitzvah and the angel. Now, how many people knew that? Someone goes to Israel, give me a few bucks. Great. Now you all know. Okay. What'd you say? Yes, but that's a little different than what we're talking about. It's always a mitzvah to give tzedakah. If I give tzedakah here in the building, it's a mitzvah. We're talking about ensuring a safe journey. Right. So if you know people are going or people are coming, that's the whole idea on the plane. And when people land, people will say Birkat HaGomel, the prayer for Thanksgiving, that they made it through the trip safely. It's in the Siddur, it's in the Torah service, and sometimes people are moved to say Birkat HaGomel because they went through something very difficult and they survived it, probably all of us, one point or another. So now, let's get back to this entry. The messenger, the angel, unsuspecting and unaware. Sometimes you know you're on a mission, but sometimes you don't know. You're living life and you don't know what's behind what's going on. Consumed by their own plans and itineraries, busy at work on their own schemes. 3 messengers come to Abraham and Sarah and tell them 3 things. One of which is as the imminent birth of Isaac in a year. The question is asked, you have to send all 3? Why don't you send 1 with 3 messages? And there's a tradition, one tradition, there are other traditions, of course, but there's a tradition that an angel is only on 1 mission at a time. You got to focus and make sure you do it right. So you don't want to give them too much. You know, sometimes we get too much, we can't handle it all. 1 thing, all right, I can handle 1 thing. Yeah, that'll remember. So 1 thing at a time. So they're busy. People chosen to be messengers of the Most High rarely even know that they are God's messengers. That's a great line because that leads into the story of the Lamed Vovniks that I'll come back to. Larry Kushner now says a personal note. He says, I do not know how many times in one's life one is also a messenger, but for everyone, it is at least once. So if you take these things seriously, you think about, have you ever been in that position? If not, will you? What do they say? Everybody has their 15 minutes, right? So you get that. And then the story of the Lamed Vovniks, which I bet a lot of you know, but just to review, there's a beautiful story. I'm not sure of the source. Didn't we just read about it in the Talmud? Didn't they just mention it not too long ago? They did, didn't they? Because I got to check that source again. But according to the story, Lamed Vav are 2 Hebrew letters that when you put them together spell 36. Lamed is 30, Vav is 6. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, 6. There are 36 righteous people that live in the world. And because of their goodness, the world sustains itself. It does not succumb to the evil. So there's a lot of traditions with that. One is, nobody knows who they are. Nobody. You don't know who they are around you. And if you're one, you don't know. Because one of the things has to be humility, I guess. Great level of humility. There's a tradition that says, if you think you're one, you're definitely not. So I have spent too much time chasing my tail. Going on a given day, you know, I'm a Lamed Vovnik. I'm really not. Meaning I am. I'm too humble to be one. You know, certain people are just certain kind of people, righteous people, you know? And one of the great lessons from the story is you don't need the whole world to be good for the world to be good. All you need is a little. All you need is 36 people, and it goes on. Tradition is if somebody dies, then somebody else fills in the ranks. The way it is. And you don't know who they are. In a dark room, all it takes is 1 candle to light it up. And that's this feeling too. And we're coming up on the holiday of candles. So there it is. All it takes is a little goodness. And maybe one lesson to take home is, lest you think there's too much evil and too many problems and obstacles in the world, you never know what little piece of goodness will save it all for us. That's a huge high holiday message, isn't it? We're all looking for that little mitzvah that's going to get us into the book of life together. And it is a huge connection to Eliyahu HaNavi, Elijah the prophet. According to tradition, Eliyahu didn't die in the regular way. He disappeared up in the heavens. And so what does that mean? He's free to come back and visit us in different guises from time to time. We all know we pour a cup for Elijah at the Seder. We hope he'll show up, come and drink. Now we have Kos Miriam, a cup for Miriam too. Pretty soon one day we'll be watching that cup too to see if Miriam's drinking. But so far it's still Elijah. But Elijah often takes on the guise of a stranger, shows up either to a town or to an individual to test them, to see how they're treated. He'll be like the beggar that's suddenly on the street, the guy who shows up at your door looking for a meal. Somebody you don't know, and it'd be real easy to close your door on them, but wondering how you treat them. And there's a lot of stories about Elijah shows up, and some people are kind, and they take care of him, and prayers are answered, and other people dismiss him, drive him away, and later they find out that Elijah visited them, and they didn't do so good. So one thing we learned from that is don't disdain everyone or anyone. Treat everyone with kindness so that if Elijah shows up at your door, you'll be good and things will go well. So that's all based on this thing. Guys, I hope you had an opportunity to make a difference in some people's lives. I know we all have, but I hope you'll have it again. And I hope you'll get the feeling of satisfaction sometime that, like, I was an angel, you know? We call them angels of mercy, all the frontline workers lately, people, you know, working with health and all that other stuff. I hope you'll get a chance to feel, wow, I really did something, you know, whether it was God-inspired or whatever, but, you know, I did something. I was on a mission and I came back successful. So I wish it for all of us, and that's Larry Kushner. So now we're at the bottom of page 153. Dear God, cause a new light to shine on Zion, and may we all soon be worthy of its illumination. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer Me'orot, you are the creator of lights. Send us your light and your peace, and let us reflect your light by being kind to others in this world. Amen. Page 154. Those of you wearing a talit, feel free to start reaching for the four corners. And we're going to gather them together at the bottom of the page. V'haviheinu l'shalom me'arba kanfot ha'aretz v'tolicheinu kamemiyud li'artzeinu ki el po el yishuot ata v'anu b'charta kolam v'lashon Kerav tanu l'shimcha hagadol Selah be'emet lehodot lecha Uyachedcha b'yahava Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'yamo Yisrael b'yahava. 155 is Shema. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto L'olam Va'ed. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol miodecha v'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha Hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivdecha b'veitecha, u'v'lechtecha v'derech, u'v'shochbecha, u'v'kumecha, u'kshartam liot al yadecha, v'ayulatotafot beinenecha, u'ktavtam al mezuzot beitecha, u'v'isharecha. 156. I am Shema Tishmuel Mitzvotai. Something with the right level. Kimei Hashamayim al haaretz. 156 in the middle over the tzitzit. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor tahaber el b'nei Yisrael v'amarta alehem v'asu lahem tzitzit hanfei migdam l'doratam v'natnu al tzitzit hakanaf v'til techelet v'yalachem l'tzitzit uritem oto uzchartem et kol mitzvot Adonai v'asitem otam Velo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem asher atem zonim achareihem leman tizgeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher atzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liolachem lelohim ani Adonai Elohechem. Last three words. Adonai Elohechem emet v'yatziv v'yachamim v'olam va'ed l'dor v'ador kayam u'shmo kayam v'chison achon u'malchuto v'emunoto la'ad kayam. We traditionally release the tzitzit at this point, and we move ahead to page 158 in the middle. Mi chamocha Ba'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh norati lo osefele shira chadasha shibechu ge'ulim l'shimcha asfatayam yachad kulam hodu im lichu v'yamru Adonai imlo le'olam va'ed. Bottom of 158. We're up to Tzur Yisrael. For those who want to rise, we'll do the paragraph, then begin the Amidah on the next page. Tzur Yisrael, kuma bi'ezrat Yisrael, uftechinu mecha, Yudah v'Yisrael, Go aleinu Adonai tzvot shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Kal Yisrael. 159 at the top, the left column. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor V'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Chastei Avod, U'Mevi Goel Livnei V'Nehem, Laman Shemo B'Yahava. 160, Melech Ozer Ufokedu Moshiach U'Magen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ufoked Sarah, atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mechayim Eitim atah Rav L'Hoshia, Mashiv HaRuach, Umorid Agashem, Mechakel Chayim Bechesed, Mechaye Meitim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekaye memunato lishenei afar michamocha bal giburot umida mehalach malach memit umechaye umatzmiach Yeshua v'neman ata lachayot meitim baruch atah Adonai mechaye hametim. Kedusha is 161. Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam, kshem shmakti shimota b'shmei marom, kakatu v'yad neviecha, karazel zevi amar, kadosh, 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 Adonai tzivot, melech al haaretz kivodo, az mikol, rash gadol, adir v'chazak mashmim kol, Minasim liumat serafim Liumatam Baruch Yomeru, Baruch Kivod Adonai, Mim Kamo, Mim Kamo Chamakenu Tofia, V'einenu tirena, tirena malchutecha, kadavar ha'amur, v'shirei uzecha. V'einenu tirena, tirena malchutecha, kadavar ha'amur, v'shirei uzecha. Aidei, David, Aidei, David, Aidei, David, Mashiach tzidkecha, Yimloch Adonai Leolam, Elohai Tzion, Ledor Vador, Hallelujah. After me, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Nagid God Lecha, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador Nagid God Lacha, Ola Netzach Netzachim, Kedushatecha Nakdish, Kedushatecha Nakdish, Veshivchacha Eloheinu, Mi Pinu Lo Yamush, Leolam Leolam Ba'ed, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador Nagid God Lacha, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador Nagid God Lacha, Kiel Malach Gadol, Gadol V'Kadosh, Gadol V'Kadosh Ata, Kiel Malach Gadol, Gadol V'Kadosh, Gadol V'Kadosh Ata, Baruch Ata Adonai, Hahel HaKadosh. 162, second paragraph, we continue on our own. Yismach Moshe b'matnat chelko. Baruch atah mekadesh Shabbat. Modim anachnu lach shalom. Sim shalom tova avracha. Shirim asher lishlomo. Yosef shalom b'mo v'yosef shalom. Shalom Imramav, Uyat Shalom Aleinu, V'Yachol Yisrael, V'Imru, Amen. Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, V'Yachol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, V'Yachol Yisrael, V'Imru, Amen. Shabbat Shalom, Boker Tov, everyone. Look at that. We got a minion, the way I count. So, Bert's giving out, I think, a couple aliyot. And, we're going to be real easy about this. If you want to sing from your seats, you don't even have to get up. Everybody's welcome to join in with others. The Torah blessings are not only in your Siddur, but I put them up there on the far table. The Torah is going to be in the middle table. So feel free to participate. I don't know what Bert's doing. I asked him to give out 2 aliyot. Meanwhile, he's giving everybody a part. I'm trying to. Okay, I was just curious how far you're going. I was wondering if you were giving out like a softload already. Additional aliyot. 8, 9, 10.
There's 3 people on the stream. Aaron had sent me a message. We're also talking.
Gotcha. Row your boat. So, okay. So, Bert, thanks for doing that. Boy, you got an individual message from everyone. To everyone. So, all right, we're going to do that. Today's parsha is called Vayishlach. Let's turn to it, say a quick word about it. Hopefully we'll have some chance to look at it a little later. Vayishlach is in the book of Genesis. It means he sent. It is the story of Jacob realizing he has to face his brother again after many years of separation and enmity, wondering where that is now. It's on page 198. Jacob sends malachim. There's your word. He sends messengers to his brother. Here it's probably not angels. Someone probably offered that it is because Jacob's a patriarch and he's special and it's a divine message in order to reconcile with his brother. But here it's probably just messengers. And he's telling them that he's coming. He's going to meet him. He prepares to meet him. He prepares for, they say, get ready, hope for good news, pray, but be ready for bad news. That's exactly what he does. He hopes that things will go well, but he prepares for war and he prepares for problems. And so he does all that. Then he's going to finally meet up with Jacob, with Esav. But before he does that, he hears that Esav is coming to meet him with Arba Meot Ish, 400 men. That constitutes a potential war party. And so now he's more worried about what he's seeing. It's not just Esav himself. Hi, nice to see you again. We'll talk. 400 men. What could that mean? So he's worried about that. Then, when you take a look at page 201, you read the story about Jacob wrestling. And we ask the question, who does he wrestle with? Here it says clearly, it says an ish, a man. But a lot of people suggest a lot of different interpretations that are on the bottom of 201. So feel free to take a look at them. And then after the wrestling match is over at daybreak, a lot of interesting things happen. Jacob's going to get his thigh sprained, which has to do with kashrut and not eating the sinew vein, which is part of what I understand filet mignon. Kosher Jews stay away from that. And he's going to get a name change, different than his ancestors. Not just a letter, but a whole name. Avram goes to Avraham with a hay. Sarai goes to Sarah with a hay. Jacob is going to go to Yisrael. A whole new name change. And we have to talk about an element of that. And then afterwards in chapter 33, they're going to meet. You can see how that ends up, and that's where we're at. So we're going to continue with the Torah service, and the ark is going to be opened. Anybody's doing that? Yes? Warren's standing already. Anybody else wants to stand as the ark is open? Feel free to do so. Vayhi bin Saron, Vayomer Moshe, Kuma Adonai, V'afutzu Oivecha, V'anusu Misanecha Mipanecha, Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah, Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah, Udavar Adonai, Mirushalayim, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Liamo Yisrael, Bigdushato. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Gadol Adonai, Tzion Roma Shemo Yachdav. Not Hashem, you may be seated, everyone. Can you take the top off? And if you call from over there, just give me a second. Go ahead. Great. Give me a second. Put both the foul one. And what did I say, we'll do two with the mop too? Yes, I said, okay. Okay. So friends, a lot of you know, I'm sure, from experience, some Torah readings are easy to find in the beginning, and some are difficult. The easiest one for me is usually Bereshit. There's a big bet there, and I look for that. Other times it's difficult because it's in the middle of a column, and it can all look the same, black and white Hebrew. Other times it's easy because there's a lot of things that make it easy and a lot of things that make it hard. This one happens to be easy. First of all, we're rolled here, thanks to Bert over many years, some others who have had the Torah ready for us to go. So it might be a column or two, but pretty much we're here. Then sometimes I come in, I see it's a column or two off, and I know there's been a bar bat mitzvah because they're reading their parts or whatever, and that might be elsewhere. If it's the beginning of a parsha, it's one thing, but sometimes we're reading in the middle or the end of a parsha, so it's not just finding the beginning of the parsha. We got to move on and see what it is. But in all the years we've been here, even if it's taken a little while, I don't think we've ever said, can't find it, we'll put it away.
Sometimes it takes a while.
Sometimes. We always get to it. That's a great thing. What a great Jewish thing. We always get to it. So, we're gonna read two Aliyot and then Maftir, and the story by Yishlach, as we said. So, Bert, if you wanna call up the first one.
Where's number one?
Joyce and Murray, I'm sorry, if you wanna come up, you can. I'm gonna ask you to come up here. We're kinda doing such that, if you wanna sit there, you can. Whatever you wanna do. Guys, whatever works for you. Anybody wants to come kiss the Torah, come do so. If you'd like, you came this far, you might as well go all the way. There you go. Right where the yacht is, where the new paragraph. Great. Guys, we're gonna have to get that to go over there, so I can. And I'm gonna.
Murray, I think the rabbi wants to.
No.
Just be over here. You won't see,
I want the yacht. Right in front of me, you're still in the yard. Norris Bank, guys, I hope you're having a good time. Young lady, would you like to kiss the toe? Right there. Val, what's your story?
I'm waiting my turn. I went to preschool. I know I had
You learned a lot.
my turn.
Right here. There, right there. Beautiful. Go ahead, guys. Bert's gonna help you. There's the brachot. Feel free to all sing together. Amen. Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim Lefanav El Esav Achiv Artsa Seir Sidei Edom Vayitzav Otam Lemur Ko Tomrum Lavani Sad Ko Amar Avdechai Yaakov In Lavan Garti Vacher Ad Ata Vayili Shor V'Chamor Tzon Ve'evet V'Shipha V'Shalcha Lagi Ladoni Limsochein Be'edecha. Amen. Yash T'Gok to our first group. Got a lot of Torah students there. Kain Yerbu, may you continue to enjoy the Torah and come up for Aliyot. We are now on our second Aliyah, which you're going to find on page 199. 198 at verse 7. And for those of you that want to kiss the Torah, I'll point to it right here, right there.
Yeah, I'm good.
Right there, yeah. All right, guys, kiss the Torah right there. Then go with Josh when you're all ready. We'll sing the brachot. Amen. Vayashuvo malachim el Yaakov lemor b'banu el achicha el Esav v'gam holech litracha v'arba meot ish imo vayira Yaakov meod vayitzer lo vayachatzatam asher ito v'yatatzon v'yadamakar v'agmalim l'shnei machanot vayomer Im yavo Esav el hamachane ha'achad v'hikahu v'ayah hamachane ha'nishar lifleitav. Amen. Yeah, got it. So, first what I want to do is, we're going to make a Mishaberach L'cholim. Mishaberach L'Tera Abram Yitzchak Yaakov Yuten Sarv Torah Cholaya. Go around the room, we have names to share. People want to say Mishaberach for somebody, Lynn?
Ani Novosel, Beth Miller, Howard Walters, Laura Van Warren, Shirley Shore, Howard Kessler, Ginny Staley, and Jonathan First, and Lisa Horowitz.
Okay, beautiful. Josh? You pointing to somebody? Oh, I'll get it. Gotcha, thanks. Murray. Wow, there's a biblical name. You ever heard one? Doc? Rita? Bert?
Hillary the governor.
To Alana Donald's mom, Elaine Finkelstein, to Phil Wax and David Wax, to Mario Zacharias, had a procedure a little while ago, but he's doing really good. He's back at work, he's like back to work like 10 seconds later.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that sounds like, doesn't it?
I texted him, I thought he'd be in bed, like lying off the bed on the floor. He goes, "No, I'm at work." Okay, good. The Ed Kolach Erin, בתוך שאר כל ישראל, הקדוש ברוך הוא לרחם עלינו וחזקה וחותם, וישלח להם מימי רפואה שלם שמיים, רפואת הנפש, רפואת הגוף, וכל האיברים מדם של שאר ישראל. Hashmagaz Makari, Shabbat, וישלח לנו לזאת ונאמר amen. So, רפואה שלמה mamash to everybody. Now, we're going to do we do the brachot. Yeah, I'm sorry. Murray.
Oh, okay. The last two words that we read, just now, Hamisha was the top,
Right.
he survived and escaped. After the Holocaust, the Jews who survived were called She'erit HaPsita, the surviving remnant.
Yes. Yes, very good. Little Hebrew, little context for Holocaust. Going back to biblical days, the prophets spoke about She'erit Yisrael. They told the people, God promised that we will be here. We will be as numerous, it says it in the reading today, as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sands by the sea. Lo yisafer me'rov, you will not be able to count us because we're too numerous. Then Israel goes through troubles. We have wars, we have battles, people die. We might almost be wiped out. And the prophets say that Israelites or Jews might die, but the people will never be totally conquered by the Greeks, by the Romans, by the Nazis, by anyone. And whoever's left will be called She'erit Yisrael. There'll always be a remnant of Israel. When the Holocaust was over, they claimed a third of the world Jewish population, 6 million out of 18. That's quite a number. But we were still here. And to this day, I'm amazed at the Jewish fervor that kept on going after the Holocaust. That might have been a great time to say, I think maybe we've had enough. But they kept on going. And there were people who had great strength, more than ever before. And people, of course, abandoned God, and others embraced God more than ever. And the state of Israel, 3 years later, and look where we are today. The Jewish history is really phenomenal. It really is. But the point is, whenever things get tough, people die, and we've had it in our age. You know, terrible events, Pittsburgh not too long ago. Remember, we were caught up in these things. It was like surrounding us. Now it's a couple of years have passed, and like, you know, how many remember? 08 California, these were names we never knew until a synagogue got blown up or hurt. But the point is, the prophets promise that no matter how many are taken, we'll always have a remnant, whatever that means, whether it's one, whether it's a community, what happens to them, where do they go, but She'erit Yisrael. There are synagogues that are called She'erit Yisrael, right? Sheretz Yisrael or She'erit Yisrael, because that's what it means, the remnant of Israel. So either you see it in a positive, I can see a positive connotation and a negative one. Depends on how you look at it. But yes, Murray, thank you for sharing that with us. And we are part of She'erit Yisrael in a very positive way. And may we all contribute to the well-being of Judaism in the world. So we're now going to read the Maftir. And I'm going to tell you why I chose to read the Maftir. I could have read another Aliyah, but it's on page 220, verse 40. This Maftir starts out by saying, V'ela shemot alofei Esav l'mishpachotam. These are the clans of Esav, each with its families, and you're going to see several names there. And the last phrase is going to say, that is, Hu Esav Avi Edom. Esav, in case you're not sure who we're talking about, Formerly perhaps more associated with Jacob as his twin and the whole story. But now they're calling him the father of Edom because he started the Edomite people. The Edomites and the Israelites had a tough relationship throughout ancient history, sometimes battling, sometimes not. But I wanted to read it because we tend to overlook people sometimes. We tend to forget that Esav, which is really equated with that which is other and not so good, and Arabs and our opponents, Esav was the son of Isaac and Rebekah. So was Jacob. How's it that Jacob turns out that he's the great patriarch and Esav is abandoned, disdained, loses the blessing, loses the birthright? Did Esav ask for this? No. When you read his story, he's doing what he was told. His father said, I want to bless you. He said, okay, Dad, I'll go get you dinner. We'll have our meeting. You'll bless me. I was a good boy. Did Jacob have to take away his Bechorah, his birthright, early in life? Did he have to take away the bracha later? Was there deception involved? There's a lot of ways of looking at it. But the point is, Esav is kind of like the poor Miskain, the unfortunate one, who loses the birthright and the blessing to his brother. His brother plays a role. His father plays a role. I'm not sure who it is. Rivka definitely plays a role. Quick, your brother's away. Go in there. Put him some coats. Act like Esav. Get the blessing. She's got an investment. Is it a mother's intuition that Jacob will be the worthy heir, parent to the Jewish people, and Esav would not? But what does Esav really do wrong? And he's in the Torah, and it's good to recognize him and to celebrate him. The good thing is about a lot of these family divisions, you got Isaac and Ishmael, you got Jacob and Esav. In the end, they kind of work out all right. Everybody goes their own way and gets their due. But you got a lot of problems here with divided families, to the point where one says, I'm going to kill my brother, you know? And if he's serious about it, it's one thing. If it's just an expression, it's another. But Jacob doesn't know, and so he lives in fear for a long period of time, and they reconcile and kind of put past bygones be bygones. But today's not a bad day to remember Esau. Not everybody's a Jew. Not everybody's an Israelite. There's a lot of peoples in this world. And let them all be good peoples, and let us all get along in harmony. And if we had fights, let us figure out how to work them out and move on to Shalom Bayit. So we're going to read the Maftir and remember Esav L'Tovah for his goodness. Page 220, verse 40. Bert, all yours. Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Bo'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'charbanu mitoch amin natan lanu b'torato v'nekatah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. V'yelos shemot alofei Esav l'mishpachotav v'komotam b'shmotam aluf tina, aluf alva, aluf yitei, aluf ava, aluf ela, aluf binan, aluf kenaz, aluf teman, aluf mitzar, aluf madiel, aluf iran, ela alofei Edom l'moshchotam v'eretz achuzatam hu'esav avi Edom.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam natan b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. So all of you are here and all of you participate in the reading of Torah one way or another. So I want to offer this prayer for you. All of you are very committed to the synagogue, to Judaism, to all good things. We have a lot of adult students here who come to BTBJU, study the Torah, come to Daf Yomi, study the Talmud. May this Torah continue to inspire you to learn as much as we can, to be influenced by it, and to live up to it so we can refine ourselves and become the best people and Jews we can in this world. And if you forget all this, because there's a lot to remember, just remember 3 words. The Ahafta L'Orecha Kamocha. love your neighbors yourself. Let's pray in the middle, and that'll take you through. So I wish you continue connection to Torah in all good ways. Amen.
Amen.
Get some problem with that.
Joe, can you live Torah? Learn your word, right?
Yamod Hadrabiyat Tamod Hadalelek.
Yeah.
For those who would like to rise for the lifting of the Sefer Torah, please do so. Yeah, pull it down. This way. Push down, bring it up. V'zod HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Turn around. Torah, 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 Torah. Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Torah. Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Torah. Praise God. Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, Torah. Torah, Tziva lanu Moshe. Real tight. There you go. Good. Now we're gonna do this part next.
Oh, praising him. Sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, well, it was Al Blumenthal.
Did you want it on the radio?
On your right.
Is this the radio?
Yeah. Very good. That's where you're looking at. Okay, got it.
You don't need to sing?
Later. Guys, great job.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah, no, it's not easy. And we're not used to lifting these things, and they haven't gotten any lighter. Some of us been working out, ours is not. The same weight. Okay, now let's shove it. Yesh Koch, everybody. Take a look at page 221. It is a great mitzvah when you get a chance to read Kol Sefer Tanakh Kulo, an entire book of the Bible. We do it from time to time during the year in one sitting. When do we do it? Yeah, we're going to do one here. How about besides this one? Purim. We read Megillat Esther. The Talmud talks about lately with the shofar, but we also talk about it with Megillat Esther. What is the mitzvah? Is the mitzvah lishmoa, la Megillah, or likro ta Megillah? Is it to hear it or to read it? If it's to read it, then all of us have an obligation at Purim time to, if not read the whole thing, read something. Because it says we have the mitzvah to read the Megillah. If it's to hear it, then sit back, listen to the reader. So they talk about the same thing with the shofar. What's the mitzvah? Do all of us have to blow a shofar? Or do you just have to listen to the notes of the shofar? Talmud's been talking about that. So we have, why did I bring that up? I have no idea. Purim, right. We listen to the whole Megillat Esther. There are 5 Megillot, 5 scrolls in Ketuvim, third part of the Tanakh. The other 4 are read on holidays. Shir Shirim, Song of Songs on Pesach, Ruth on Shavuot, Echa, Sad Book, Lamentations on Tisha B'Av, and Kohelet on Sukkot. Then, today we have a rare occurrence of reading an entire book of a prophet, Ovadia. According to the story, look at 221. The entire brief book of Ovadia is the Haftarah. The prophecy is a message of judgment and promise. I'll leave the rest of the introduction to you. It's worthy of reading. But today we're also going to get a chance to say that we participated in an entire book of the Bible. Interestingly enough, I'll say that afterwards. Page 222. Chazon Ovadia Koamar Adonai Elohim Ledom Shemua Shamanu Meit Adonai V'tzir Bagoyim Shulach Kumu V'naku Ma'alel HaMilchama. The prophecy of Ovadia. We have received tidings from the Lord, and an envoy has been sent out among the nations. Up, let us rise up against her for battle. Thus said my Lord God concerning Edom. There's one reason why it was picked, because Edom's in the Torah. We just read it. It's Esav. And there's always thematic connections between the Torah and the Haftarah. Themes, names, places, there's connections. At least one, if not many more. Here's the first one. I will make you least among nations. You shall be most despised. Your arrogant heart has seduced you. You who dwell in clefts of the rock. In your lofty abode, you think in your heart, who can pull me down to earth? Should you nest as high as the eagle? Should your eyrie be lodged among the stars? Even from there, I'll pull you down, declares the Lord. The word for eagle is in verse 4. For all you Philadelphia football fans. The word is nesher, and nesher is an eagle. The plural is nesharim. Nesharim are the eagles. So you can remember that tomorrow. Hopefully you prayed today that they'd be the saints. We could use a victory. And also nesher in Israel, and nesher is a mode of transportation. And I have a feeling it comes from this. You know, as an eagle is swift, so this mode is swift. And nesher, what I remember is like a shared kind of like ride to a city. You know, like say, like when Jews land in Israel and they get to the airport, they get out of the airport. And if they're not being picked up or they don't have their car, they don't get in a taxi, whatever it might be. What happens is there's like a nesher waiting there. It is a ride to Jerusalem that anybody can take. You don't have to prearrange for it. You just get on. A lot of times they have 12 seats. And when you get on, when they're full, they go. First person that gets on, often would say to the driver, let's go. Wants his own taxi, wants to get to Jerusalem fast. Guy's hoping for 11 more fares to make it more worth his while. So then sometimes you get into, all right, let's go already. We got 5, we got 6, we got 8, we got 10. Everybody's different. Sometimes they wait till they're all full. But a lot of times when people land in Israel, they want to go to Jerusalem. So they know they're going to have customers. The question is how many, how quickly. So a nesher is an eagle, nesharim are the eagles. Verse 5, if thieves were to come to you, marauders by night, they would steal no more than they needed. If vintagers came to you, they would surely leave some gleanings. How utterly you are destroyed, how thoroughly rifled is Esau, how ransacked his hordes. All your allies turned you back at the frontier. Your own confederates have duped and overcome you. Those who ate your bread have planted snares under you. He is bereft of understanding. In that day, declares the Lord, I will make the wise vanish from Edom, understanding from Esau's mount. Your warrior shall lose heart, O Teman, and not a man on Esau's mount shall survive the slaughter. Poor Esau. Man, Edom's getting really hit by God, chastised, and terrible things are going to happen. And again, one question is, do they deserve it? I mean, after all, it wasn't Esau that stole from Jacob. It wasn't Esau that didn't get stole the blessing. It wasn't Esau that took it away from his brother. Look what happens to him. But this is like a traditional Jewish way. It's one of those things that need to be rethunk again, as I said on my holidays. Not sure we should be putting people down. I mean, we learn it's a value. Treat each other with respect. And look what happens to Esau and his descendants. They get slammed. So something to rethink. And was it Esau's fault? Let's go to verse 17 on page 224. But on Zion's mount a remnant shall survive. There you have, let's see what the Hebrew says. It says, Tia li fleta. There Murray's the same word, fleta. A one will escape. Not sherit, a remnant, but an escapee there shall be. It shall be holy. The house of Jacob shall dispossess them. Those who dispossess them, the house of Jacob shall be fire. The house of Joseph flame. But the house of Esau shall be straw. They shall burn it and devour it. Poor Esau, man. Man, if I were him, I'd get out of town and get a new book where he could star, get a better fate. Page 225, no survivor shall be left in the house of Esau, for the Lord has spoken, and then it talks about that they shall possess different places. You know, the reality is that we're Jews, and we claim that we have connections back to Abraham, 4,000 years. These other peoples, are they connected to the past? Are there any Edomites still around? Not that I know of. A lot of these peoples have disappeared. They're modern Italians, but are they from the same Romans that we talk about? They're modern Greeks, but are they from the same people we talked about? So there seems to be something about Israel that is like, we're survivors, you know? even after the Holocaust, when it would have been a great time to say, I had enough of this. If this is God's way of taking care of us, guess what? I'd rather get a different caretaker. But look where we are now. Jews all over the world, synagogues, day schools, camps, state of Israel. Unbelievable. So it's just an interesting dynamic here. And I feel bad for Esau. And I'm glad we talked about that today. Nobody wants to be rejected or hated, especially by the Lord. And I don't want to be in the position of a Jew that does that. Because that's what it says here. It says, the house of Jacob shall be fire and Joseph a flame, but Esau shall be destroyed by it. I don't want to destroy anybody. I want to live and let live. So something to be rethought. But this was ancient times, and we live differently today. But this is one way we can progress. Of great note is that how many verses are in the Haftarah? 21, correct. Do you know if there's a number of verses that the Haftarah has to be? And let's back into this. How many verses must an aliyah have minimally? 3, right. There's no aliyot worth their weight of 1 or 2. It's 3. And on Shabbat, traditionally, we read 7. So 3 times 7 means you're going to read a minimum of 21 verses. And we've done that for years. Things change with pandemic. Gamzu Tova. It's all good. We're all here reading Torah, kissing the Torah, celebrating. It's great. There's a tradition that like there should be minimum of 21 verses in the Torah. The Haftarah should be minimally 21 verses. Now, what's of great interest is this today. When you pick a Haftarah selection, you're usually picking from a larger book. Isaiah is 66 chapters long. You got plenty of 21 verses in there. And others are longer. But Obadiah, they didn't pick the first 21. They didn't pick the last 21. They didn't pick their favorite 21. They picked 21 because that's all it is. There was no choice. Which begs the question, are these really all verses of Obadiah? We talked about the Masoretes the other night. Remember in Daf Yomi class? Am I right? I'm just wondering here. I'm just out there imagining. What if the Masoretes saw Obadiah and said, can't have a book that's 19 verses long. It's got to be at least 21, especially if it wants to make the Haftarah parade. We need 21. So maybe we will not add 2 verses, but maybe we'll take 2 of his longer verses, cut them in half, and get to 21 because that's what they did. They codified the Torah with grammar and verses and separated it into books and chapters. I'm just wondering, how is it possible? Look, if Obadiah was 19 verses long, it probably wouldn't have made a Haftarah. I think there are exceptions. I think there are Haftarot that are shorter, certainly ones that are longer. But we like to try to make 21. Say it was 19, what would they have done? Said, we're not going to read it for Haftarah, it's not long enough? Or they said, yeah, we'll read it. It's a whole book. It's long enough, you know? So it's a short book. All right, it's a book. But ironically, there's 21, which is really wild when you realize that Haftarah is supposed to be 21 verses long. So I'm not sure what to do with all that. For more study, as we say. The end of the book says, for liberators shall march up on Mount Zion to wreak judgment on Mount Esav, and dominion shall be the Lord's. Again, I'm seeing that in a very negative light today. No one should have dominion over anyone else. It's a Jewish value, and we don't want to see other people's hurt. Esav really didn't do anything to Jacob. He really didn't. He was the eldest. It's not his fault. He's the eldest. It's not your fault if you're the youngest. You are who you are. But Esav didn't say to Jacob, I'm going to steal your stuff. Well, you could argue Jacob did it to his brother, and it's just unfortunate. So it's never too soon to straighten things out, make peace with others, make peace with our past, and resolve to go on. So I wanted to share that with you. You just heard a whole book of the Bible, Obadiah.
When was Obadiah written in terms of history? Do you know? Because it looks like the destruction of Edom, yet we know that Ruth was an Edomite. But clearly,
We know that who?
or to the Moabite, no one.
Yeah, a little different. Yeah, that's okay. That's all right. I mix up these things too. In terms of dates, I don't know all these things and less about Haftarah, but here in the note on 221, it says the Haftarah takes us to the end of the biblical period, after Judah was exiled from its homeland, which would take you to maybe 586 before the Common Era, when the first temple was destroyed, give or take, around there. And Edom participated in the downfall of the nation. What would be so sad would be if you asked Edom, why did you fight against Israel? What would be so sad would be, well, they did it to us. Ever read the story about what Jacob did to Esau? And what place our father and our people got in the Torah and Haftarah? It's despised. So, yeah, we kind of came back for them. The prophet indicts the elder brother for duplicity and arraigns him on charges of passive and active deceit. That's the claim we make against the younger brother, Jacob, for what he did in the Torah. The roles of deceiver, deceived are now reversed with fatal consequences for Edom. Look what happened when they were reversed before. When Jacob wins out, he gets everything. Gets the birthright, the blessing. He's the new patriarch of the people. But when Edom does it, when Esau, now it's fatal. That's not fair. Ovadja predicts Edom's destruction and dispossession. As a triumphant nation, Israel will consume Edom and resettle its homeland. What is more, this destruction is part of the scenario at the end of days that will result in the restoration of God's dominion over all. This is muddy stuff, guys. God's dominion over all, but one of them's favored, and one of them's not, and one of them's destroyed, and one of them's not, and the roles are reversed. It's really messy, and it's really unfortunate. And then it goes to a question which I won't deal with now. We dealt with it, I think, this past week a little bit. You know, we're reading the stories of Genesis, and after a little while, you get sick. I mean, look at all the trouble that happens. Ishmael, Hagar out in the desert, there's no water. She says to God, forget that I'm going to die. I don't want to see my kid die. Really? This is what's going on? Sarah says to Abraham, Garesh et Amazot, drive out this woman. Abraham doesn't know what to do. This would be I'm telling you, married with children would eat the stuff up. If you ever see that show, it's really funny. Abraham says, God, what am I supposed to do? I'm married to two women here. They're both fighting. At least Sarah's fighting. She wants me to drive away Hagar. You could say God should have stepped in and said, Abraham, no. You're a family. You got to learn how to live together. You got to make this work. Both boys are going to be special, and no one's going to be favored, and no one's going to get hurt. What's God say? Listen to Sarah. Whatever she says, do. Don't worry. What? Yeah, but he's got two wives. He's only making one happy. The other one, you could argue, is not really his wife. Sarah was. She's his wife. She has a kid with him. That was the definition of ancient times. It's just, there's a lot of misfortune in these stories. And a lot of people get hurt, and one brother threatens the life of another. And it's really tough. It's not happily ever after. And it's not Cinderella. It's tough. And you got divided families. And now look where we are. Hundreds of years later, Elihu, at the destruction of the temple, they're still hating Esau and his people. Nobody wants to be hated. We of all people know what it is to be hated. Look what we turn around and do sometimes, our tradition. Time for a new tradition. That's what I'm saying. We're not going to change these words. The Torah and the Bible are codified, but we can change the interpretation. And I wanted to share that with you. Because somebody walks in and says, hi, I'm Esau's great-great-great-great-grandson. Am I welcome here? What am I going to say? I just read your story. That's not what we do with people. We welcome them in. You're different, you're welcome. Different race, you're welcome. Different religion, welcome. Different sexual orientation, you're welcome. Esau? No. Got to draw the line somewhere. It's just unfortunate. Because you know what Esau is? He's created in the image of God. And look what happens with traditions. Look, this is the history of the world. I just don't want to contribute to the negative part. I want to contribute to the positive part. So I share that with you. Bert, should we put away the Torah? Good. Warren? Oh, I thought you were coming to help this way. You're going that way. That's okay. Yeah, that's okay. Great. Come help us. Handsome young man. Please rise. Yahalelu et Shem Adonai, ki niskashem olavado, hodu al eretz v'shamayim, vayarem keren liyamo, tila lecho chasidav, livnei Yisrael, am krovo, hallelujah, hallelujah. Eitz chaim hi, lama chazikim ba, v'tom cheha, meushar, deracheha, darchei noam, v'chol netivoteha, shalom, hashivenu Adonai, elecha v'nashuva, chadesh, chadesh amenu, chadesh amenu, kedem. Go ahead. See, that's what happens. You stand up, you become president. You know. All right. Guys, you can have a seat, everybody. Warren, thanks. Yashkov. Bert, as always, Yashkov. Thank you for all you do. And Yashkov to everybody. Read the Torah, heard the Torah, there it is. Hopefully you learned a little something about the Torah and off Torah today. Remember Ovadia. I'm going to do this real quickly. I was going to spend a long time studying. If we didn't have a minion, we were going to spend a lot of time. I'm going to do two things real quickly. I want to talk about his name. Obadiah would be what you would say if you didn't have much of a connection to Hebrew Jewish tradition. That's a lovely name. But in Hebrew, he's Ovadia. Ovadia is made up of two words. What does it mean? Help me out. Eved, servant of God. Eved Adonai. Yah, Eved Yah, Eved Adonai. He's a servant of the Lord. The word Eved goes both ways too. When we sing Avadim Hayinu, Hayinu b'Mitzrayim, we were slaves in Egypt, we're not dancing around like, yeah, those were the good old days. Our ancestors did when they thought they had less in the desert. They wanted to go back. But you don't want to be a servant. However, the greatest Jew we know was Eved Adonai, besides Ovadia. Who was it? Greatest Jew in the Torah? Moshe. Moshe is called Eved Adonai. It's a servant of the Lord. So you don't want to be a servant in a negative way, but you want to be a servant in a positive way. Remember somebody once said, I serve, but I'm not a servant. Meaning I'm here to help. I'm here to represent God, do good things, but I'm not a slave. And we learned no slavery, no treating each other poorly. But to be Eved Adonai is the greatest thing, a servant of the Lord. Every time you do something good for yourself or somebody else, you're Eved Adonai. Remember earlier we talked about the missions we have in life? Maybe you're here to serve somebody or to do something that nobody else can do, so you never know. So I wanted to talk about his name, Ovadia, servant of the Lord, hopefully in a very positive way, but not in a way of servitude or slavery or degrading. Now, turn to page 202. That just took a minute. Good. I got 2 minutes left for this. Maybe I'll use less. Page 202. Jacob wrestles with whoever he wrestles with, right? Man, angel, himself, his fears, his future, whatever. Page 202, Jacob says, bless me. The adversary says, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And that's what Jacob says. And the other says, what is your name? And he replies, Yaakov. I said this the other day. In modern Hebrew, you wouldn't ask someone in Israel, what is your name, by saying, what is your name? You don't say, Ma Shimcha. Same as a name. Shimcha, your name. Ma Shem Shalcha. You don't say it. There's an expression, a bitoy. Ech chorim lecha. How do they call you? That's what they say. Ma Shimcha, people would laugh at you, go, what are you talking in Torah? No, it's Ech chorim lecha. For a man. For a woman, Ech chorim lach. How do they call you? And then you say your name. So he says, Yaakov. What does the adversary say? Vayomer, verse 29. Lo Yaakov ye'amer od shimcha ki im Yisrael ki sarita im Elohim v'im anoshim v'tuchal. No longer shall your name be Yaakov and be called, but now it'll be Yisrael. Why? It explains it. Kisarita, the word Yisrael, Kisarita im El. 2 words again, like Evidyah, Ovadyah, Sarita El, Yisrael. You have striven with God and with people, Vatuchal, and you've acquitted yourself and proved yourself able. And you can hang in there. So there's so much here. I'm just going to go to 1, maybe 2 points quickly. You know, God, remember that? I love that E.F. Hutton commercial. God speaks, people listen. E.F. Hutton speaks, people listen. You remember that? You guys are old enough. It's like when the angel speaks, people listen. He says his name's not going to be Jacob anymore. You won't be known. You're losing that name altogether. After Avram becomes Avraham, nobody calls him Avram. Rare. It's like in the liturgy, but nobody calls him. Sarai, once you become Sarah, nobody calls her Sarai after that, unless you're reading that story with her name still original. But, okay, no more Jacob? How do we know the name? The next verse says his name. Next verse says, Vayishal Yaakov. Don't you think this would have been the best place to introduce the new name? Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time live on stage in Jewish history, please welcome with me the new man with a new name, with a new attitude, the third patriarch, Yisrael. It just said no more. It doesn't say not much more, in a little while no more. Your friends can call you Jacob. But people? No. We all have names. Our people who love us, they call us. But we don't want everybody calling us names. No, it's no more. Lo'od means no more. You can't get around that. The next verse, they call him Jacob. I'm sorry. Did somebody not read the verse before? Did the editors, like the Masoretes, cut it in the wrong place? That was an error. We cut and pasted a line too short. He's known as Yaakov. Anybody want to suggest why? I'll give you one answer because I don't want to keep you too late. But he's known as Jacob the rest of his life. Not only that, today, we still call kids Jacob. It's a beautiful name. We don't name him Jacob going, terrible name, man. But you're going to get it. We think he'll be a terrible kid. No. Synagogues are called Beit Yaakov. Day schools are called Beit Yaakov. It's a glorified name. It's a patriarch. So whatever happened to this? No more. Did this guy not tell anybody? What do you mean? He told the whole world. It's in the Torah. Why is he still called Yaakov? Any ideas? There's no right or wrong here, buddies, friends. I'm going to give you one, which is tough. Depends how you look at it. Okay, here you go. It's actually, like they say in my favorite movies, Back to School. It's one answer in 2 parts. The negative part is that there's no question it could be hard to run away from your previous life. Whatever you've done before up to now, it can be hard to run away from. Ask people who get out of jail when they try to find a new job. Ask people who have done something wrong or have done this or that or the other thing, or they're connected to family members who have done wrong things, and people say, aren't you like the daughter of so-and-so? He did a terrible thing. It can be hard to run away from that. That could chase you the rest of your life. That's the negative thing. And makes you think about what you do. Be careful. I remember very inspired by a quote that says, you can do anything you want in life, anything, as long as you realize the consequences. You want to steal $1 million in the bank? Okay, just realize what might happen. Right? You do it. Don't understand what might happen. Here's the positive side, and we'll finish on that. The old Jacob is now the new Jacob. The old Jacob, who was a man of deception, tricking his family, tricking his brother. Now there's a new man who's gone through life and its hardships and its fears and worrying about his brother and retribution and revenge. And now the new Jacob is a caring one who separates his clan and says, hopefully people will survive. Who says, Esau, I don't know what's coming, but I'm going to stand up to you. And hopefully you'll embrace me as a brother, and hopefully you won't kill me. So there's a new Jacob on the block. And that's a good thing when you can transform your name from its negative past to its positive present. And we can all do that as we try to become better people. Let people say about us, oh, that's person, yeah, he used to be so good. But lately, wow, they're Baal Tshuva. They do good things. They're not involved in that old lifestyle. Remember in League of Their Own, that great baseball movie about the women? Remember when her friend, Rosie and Madonna, says, the father says, it's better that you're playing baseball than that other stuff you used to do. Remember? And she hits him, saying, don't say that, you'll make us feel bad. We all got things about our past that make us feel bad. And if we're lucky, people don't remind us all the time. That's also a big Jewish mitzvah. Don't bring up the negative past. Let people move and grow on. So the good thing is that Jacob is now the third patriarch. He's an honorable guy. He's got a great name. And he is called Jacob now. But it's interesting how they're so explicit, no longer. The next verse, no longer. Couldn't even wait a verse. So I wanted to show that to you. Share those thoughts, Ad Khan. Because of time, we're going to rise for Aleinu, which you're going to find in your Sidurim on page 205. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol latet gedula liotzer breshit shelo asanu kugoye haratzot velo samanu kimishpachot hadama shelo samchalkenu kahem v'gor aleinu kechol amonam v'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamachim hakadosh baruch hu v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayomahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Mourner's Kaddish. We have a strong minion. Yashkal to all of you. To those who want to say it. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah. Bi'alama divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'yimaru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach liolam u'lomei maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kutsha b'richu. Le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata da miran v'alama v'yimaru amen. Yehei shloma rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen. Shabbat shalom, everyone. I'm sorry, I don't recognize you on your mask.
Yeah, no, Mark, I've never been here before.
Really? Of all the buildings in Philadelphia, this is the one you chose to pick?
It's the short story. My daughter goes to the choir, not far from here.
Goes where?
She's in a choir.
Choir. Right here. Right.
I've been bringing her here on Saturday for a long time, carpool was on, so I would either drop her off, but she's not doing the choir this year, so I, 2 hours ago, I'm like, hey, goodbye.
You helped us say our meeting. And I'm sorry I didn't welcome you earlier, but we're welcoming you now. Mark, it's good to see you. This is the gang. We'll say hello at the kids' table, and you're always welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you. So guys, if you want to rise for the final prayer, and then I'm going to invite you to join us in another lobby for Kiddush Hamotzi. From the words of the Bible, we bless you all. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May God lift his face to you and grant you life. Shalom. May God give us all the gift of peace. Amen. Guys, you're heroes today. Get a minute. You left birthday cottage, whoever else. Shabbat shalom to you all. Please come join us in the